Hey there, in this tutorial we're going to learn about adjusting volume levels while mixing. When you're adjusting volume, a lot of subtle changes can be really helpful. It might take a lot of practice before you get comfortable listening with critical scrutiny. First of all, let me state that volume levels in a mix vary widely with the style of music and the goals of the mix. Different types of music use different instruments and rhythms, and these need to be emphasized in unique ways. The very best way to learn about mix styles is by listening to good music from that genre. Rock and jazz, for example, are mixed very differently. Rock tends to be very compressed, but jazz not as much. Ultimately, your goal in mixing is to balance the tracks to make the right combination. One common problem in a mix is that too many tracks contribute too much at the same time. Well, volume is your most basic tool for minimizing these conflicts. If everything is at the same volume, then nothing stands out. Your first step is to set a starting volume level for each track. Each mixing engineer will have a different preferred approach. One option is to start faders all at 0 and then lower or raise them as needed. This way you'd start with vocals or the lead instrument, and then build in the bass and drums as well as the melody and rhythm instruments after that. Another approach is to bring in one track at a time and then adjust each after that. So with this method, you start with the foundation, first drums, then bass, then body instruments like rhythm guitar and keys, and then melody instruments like lead guitar and saxophone, and finally the vocals. It's also helpful if you've taken the time to mix as you go along, making sure that the overall levels of the track are even, instead of fading in and out a lot. So take the time to stop and listen to a model song whose volume faders you want to emulate. Do this as you go along. That way it'll save you time later on. What's the right volume level? Well, this'll be what sounds right to you. There's no hard and fast rules. Pop vocals are usually louder than new age vocals, and rock drums are much louder than jazz drums. Volume isn't something you set at the beginning of your song and then forget about it. You actually need to monitor each instrument through the whole song. You might need different volumes at the introduction, at the bridge, at the chorus, for the fades in and out. Automation lets you save volume changes across timelines very easily and then make modifications later. You just draw them right in or you record them with faders on the mixer. What master volume should you be aiming for? Moderately hot. Don't push everything up until right under 0. This is just your initial baseline, remember? You've got to save some room for equalization, EQ, effects, and mastering. In fact, most volume maximizing techniques are better handled in the mastering process. Sometimes it's easier to do fade-ins and outs on individual clips rather than to tweak the volume fader. You can do crossfades too for overlapping clips for composite takes. You can also group faders for some tracks together into a submix so you can adjust them all later with one fader. This is pretty common for mixing background vocals or drums. First, set the level for each part of the kit, then group the tracks together into one track or channel, and then adjust them against your other instruments. This lets you make changes to the submix that are independent of the main mix. Here are some tips to get the most out of volume tweaking. Step 1. Even out your overall levels. If your song starts quietly, boost the master volume at the beginning and bring it down a bit when louder instruments come in. It's important for a song to begin with strength and presence. When louder instruments drop out, bring up the levels again. Step 2. Work the emotion. You can enhance the impact of an emotional peak with a little volume, but don't overdo it or it's gonna sound hammy. Step 3. Bring out obscured phrases. Watch if instruments collide at a moment that blurs an important lyric, Or if an instrument or vocal dips into a lower register and gets less audible, you're going to want to bring that up a little bit. Number 4, explode your entrances. When a new part comes in, give it a little boost, like a couple decibels, then have it settle into its optimal level after a couple seconds. It's going to help listeners focus their attention in your mix. And step 5, watch drum dynamics. You can bring up drums when the energy level in a song rises and then bring them back down a little when it falls. Otherwise, especially if you're using sample drums, they can sound lifeless or relentless. A real drummer is going to vary her performance based on the dynamics of the song, so keep this in mind when you're mixing. And this concludes our tutorial about adjusting your volume while you're mixing. In our next tutorial, we're going to learn about panning.